Good morning. Very pleased to be with you here today on the territory of the signatories to Treaty 7. And I'd also like to acknowledge the Métis people of Alberta who share a very deep connection with this land. I'm pleased to be joined by our MLA from Calgary, Bular McCall, and also our justice critic, Irfan Sabir, as well as our MLA from Calgary, Buffalo, Joe Ceci, our municipal affairs critic. There is a healthcare crisis in Alberta under this UCP government. This morning, 35 rural hospitals are partially closed due to staffing shortages. Urban emergency rooms are overwhelmed. Hundreds of thousands of Albertans are without a family doctor, and ambulances are being delayed longer and longer. Alberta families are having to travel further and wait longer to get health care under this UCP, if they can get that health care at all. Now, earlier this week, our health critic, David Shepherd, stood with Kathy Ward, a senior who moved into a house that she and her husband chose specifically for being close to a doctor's office. Now, that doctor is leaving the province because of the hostility of the UCP. Those are the exact explanations that that doctor gave. So for Albertans who are now without ready access to primary care or family medicine of any type, more and more medical problems sit untreated until they become emergent, and they ultimately end up needing an ambulance and a trip to the emergency room. So that's where those ambulances become even more important. And we can see that increasing pressure on our ambulance system right here in Calgary. In Calgary alone, nearly 10,000 EMS shifts were unfilled over this past year, meaning that paramedics who already work long hours saving lives must shoulder more work to protect the system from total collapse. Now today, I am here to share more AHS information that shows the scale of the crisis in our ambulances under the UCP. Using the Freedom of Information Act, we can see that when the UCP took office in late April of 2019, there were about 40 red alerts a month in Calgary. Not great, but just remember that number, 40 red alerts. And a red alert is activated when there is no ambulance available to respond to a new emergency. But for the most recent month that AHS will release data for in October of 2022, 3.5 years later, Calgary was now averaging more than 400 red alerts a month. That is a 10-fold increase of Calgary simply running out of paramedics and ambulance under this UCP government's watch. Indeed, one of those red alerts, just one, happened in June of last year, when residents in Capitol Hill called for help when their neighbor was attacked by 3 dogs, and an ambulance didn't arrive for 30 minutes. That woman tragically lost her life. And AHS's own analysis concedes that it was staffing shortages and a red alert that were factors in the unacceptable delay in her getting the emergency care she needed. So why don't we have enough paramedics? Well, I'll start by saying that paramedic work is both highly skilled and incredibly difficult. Paramedics attend traumatic events several times a day. The hours that they work are punishing, and they are routinely stuck at overwhelmed hospital emergency rooms for hours, sitting beside their patients long after they were supposed to go home. That means, for those paramedics, less time with their families, less time to decompress from the day, let alone enough time to actually recharge for the next shift. Many are genuinely fearful of the impact on their long-term mental health. Paramedics are, in effect, burning out, and many of them are leaving the profession. But on top of this, we have a UCP government that actually threatened paramedics with wage cuts. This is a near impossible environment to recruit into. The UCP's long-delayed EMS report turned out to be nothing but a plan to make another plan. A task force that concluded we need another task force. There was no action whatsoever that was initiated on recruitment or retention. Albertans have had enough of this UCP chaos and incompetence. We need real action. There are specific steps that paramedics themselves have been calling for, and the UCP have, quite frankly, ignored these specific steps for years. So we must commit to getting paramedics off shift on time and home to their families. We must stop treating them as disposable workers on 89-day temporary contracts and instead offer all of them permanent, full-time contracts. Something like 40% of paramedics right now don't have health benefits, don't have a pension, they don't even get sick days, and they don't know if they will work in the same job 79 days after that particular day. Put simply, if we want to have more paramedics, we need to start treating the ones that we do have better. So while Danielle Smith and the UCP are fixated on the fringe obsessions of their base, an Alberta NDP government will end the UCP chaos in healthcare. Danielle Smith wants to spend millions of dollars of taxpayers' money on a do-nothing committee to pander to her base, and I'm referring to the one recently appointed with Preston Manning. Instead, what the Alberta NDP will do is bring real resources to the front line, and we will work respectfully with healthcare professionals. And we will launch the largest healthcare recruitment campaign that Alberta has ever seen. We'll make sure that Alberta families have access to the care that they need when they need it, close to home. Thank you all very much, and I'm certainly happy to take any questions that folks here might have.
Thank you. I'll do a quick check for questions in the room. And we'll go to the phones. Just a reminder to press *9 if you're joining us on the phone. Use the raise hand function if you're joining us via Zoom. If you could say your name and your outlet at the top, we'll go to our first caller. Sorry, we can't quite hear you there, Michelle.
Is that us?
Just stand by for 1 second. We'll come back to Michelle, and we'll go to our next caller.
Hi, Rachel, Dean from CP. Can you hear me?
That does sound like it might be us.
Hello?
Oh, there we go.
Go ahead.
Oh, hey!
Hey!
I'm going to ask Michelle's question then.
Okay.
'Cause I can hear her. Rachel, what's your reaction to Dina Hinshaw leaving and going to BC?
Well, I will say it is a very public demonstration of a trend that we are seeing throughout the medical profession, both with respect to doctors and other frontline healthcare professionals. We're seeing and talking to and hearing from more and more doctors who want to work within a stable healthcare system, one where science is sort of, and evidence is the driving force of decision making, and of course where they're able to practice their profession in a stable and respectful environment. So I'm afraid this sort of, as I say, this is a clear demonstration of what we've been hearing about on the ground for quite some time.
Any follow-up, Dean?
Yeah, can you just assess overall, I mean, how did Dina Hinshaw do?
Well, listen, I think, ultimately, there's going to be an evaluation of how things worked. I think that the relationship between Denny Hinshaw and a very divided and chaotic UCP cabinet will have to be assessed going forward. I think we know that overall Alberta did not do as well as the rest of the country on a number of fronts, and in fact many times we were not performing, we were the worst performing province in terms of many measures around COVID. The issue of course is the degree to which that rests with Dina Hinshaw and the degree to which that rests with a UCP cabinet that was very much interfering with the role of the CMOH and directing a much more casual response, one that led to more infections and more serious illness and more deaths many times in Alberta than what was happening on a per capita basis in most other provinces.
We'll go back to our first caller.
Hello, can you hear me now?
Sure can.
I sure can.
Yay, 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 yay. Okay, so Dean took my question, but I have another question about Dr. Hinshaw. Well, actually, public health in general. I mean, you know, we don't have a permanent CMOH, and then we lost two deputy CMOHs or MOHs before Christmas, and we haven't really heard about any of the recruitment efforts, if any, to get new people in those jobs. So I'm wondering if you can talk a little bit about, you know, your assessment of the state of public health supervision here in Alberta, or leadership, I should say.
I'm very concerned about the state of public health leadership here in Alberta under this UCP government. We recently saw the appointment of someone who is neither qualified nor objective to analyze a series of complaints by Danielle Smith's very, very extreme base around sort of critiquing what few good things this government may have done around COVID. And so that appointment of Preston Manning sends a chilling message to anybody in the healthcare profession who believes that their practice of their profession should be based on the evidence and the research and the expertise that they have spent decades acquiring. And yet somehow here in Alberta, we've decided that we're going to have a former political person with very offside ideas render judgment on whether these experts understood their profession. And so what that means is that a lot of leading folks are going to look for somewhere else other than Alberta to settle and to do their work. And it does not bode well for the state of our public health, and quite honestly, it doesn't bode well for our ability to attract any level of medical health professionals. All folks are going to worry about what kind of extreme ideas they'll be compelled to pander to in breach of their professional obligations.
Any follow-up, Michelle?
Yeah, it's a follow-up. I mean, as we all know, public health is more than, you know, responding to COVID. There's a whole wide range of issues, and I'm wondering if, you know, what's your take on how this would affect the fact that these positions remain unfilled or with temporary individuals in them, how that affects the health of Albertans in general?
I think that it really, I think all the vacancies that we've seen, because of course we've got an acting chief medical officer of health who has not been relieved of his previous duties, so he's literally doing this off the side of his desk on a volunteer basis. And then the two deputies have not been replaced either. And so we really have a vacuum of leadership in public health. And as you know, public health officials do everything around ensuring that, you know, our water is safe, to ensuring that a whole range of communicable disease is tracked and monitored and prevented, as well as ensuring that folks who are most vulnerable to illness or disease are protected. And so all of that puts the overall public health of Albertans in jeopardy. And you know, as I say, it's quite troubling because we seem to be going backwards, and that's not what Albertans tell me that they want. We are a modern, diverse, well-educated, growing province. And the majority of folks tell me that they want their government to reflect that fact. And that's not what they're seeing right now.
We'll go to our next caller.
Hi, can you hear me okay?
Sure can.
Okay, perfect. This is Nicole Stilger with Global Edmonton. I was just actually wondering about Elections Alberta, their latest report regarding political donations, just hoping to hear from you, in response to the dollars the NDP raised and what that might signal to the party in terms of support.
Well, I mean, we're very encouraged and deeply grateful to the many Albertans, the growing number of Albertans who are choosing to contribute to our campaign going forward. And what we're hearing from them is that they are desperate to see a return to a stable, competent, caring government. They are deeply concerned about what things could look like if we get 4 more years of the same that we've got right now, which has been, very chaotic and inward-looking and conflict-focused. And so those folks are stepping up, and they're giving what little they can to contribute to our campaign. And not only folks who are stepping up with monetary donations, but also our volunteers as well are growing the numbers of our volunteers, and we're really grateful to that. So we'll just keep doing what we're doing and offering to Albertans a vision of a modern, positive future, one where we, as I say, focus on strong, stable leadership that is caring and compassionate and competent for the people of this province.
Any follow-up, Nicole?
No, that's great. Thank you so much.
Do one more pass for questions. Star 9 if you're joining us on the phone. Raise hand function if you're joining us via Zoom. And seeing none, that's all for today. Thank you.
Thank you so much for watching, and to learn more, check out albertasfuture.ca.